There comes a time in every life when we are forced to ask the deepest, most unsettling questions. Questions that shake the very core of our existence. Why am I here? What is my purpose? Where do I turn when the world turns against me? Some spend their whole lives searching for truth, wandering through darkness, looking for meaning in empty places. But what if I told you that the answers have been here all along? There is a book unlike any other. A book that has stood the test of time. A book that has endured the fire of criticism, the storms of history, and the relentless attempts to silence its message. A book so powerful that empires have crumbled, hearts have transformed, and even the most hardened souls have found peace within its words. But here's the question. If this book is nothing more than ink on paper, why do they fear it? Why do they try to suppress it, distort it, and keep it from reaching the hearts of those who seek the truth? What is it about this book that causes such fear among those who wish to control the minds of the masses? My friends, tonight, we are going to embark on a journey, one that will shake the chains of deception, awaken the soul, and reveal the undeniable power of the book that changed the world, the Quran. There exists no book in the history of humanity that has remained as untouched, unaltered, and preserved in its original form as the Quran. This, in itself, is a miracle that defies all logic, all attempts at distortion, and all the forces that have ever tried to erase it. It is a book that was revealed over 1,400 years ago, in a world vastly different from ours, in an era where written records were scarce, and oral tradition was the primary means of preserving knowledge. And yet, against all odds, the Quran stands today exactly as it was revealed, letter for letter, word for word, without a single alteration, without a single modification, without even the slightest change to its divine structure. The Quran was revealed to an unlettered prophet in the deserts of Arabia, a man who neither read nor wrote, yet carried in his heart the words that would change the course of human history. Unlike any other scripture before it, the Quran was not entrusted to scribes alone, nor was it left in the hands of the elite to be selectively shared. From the moment of its revelation, it was committed to memory. Men, women, and even children absorbed its words, safeguarding them in their hearts with a devotion unmatched by any other literary work in history. Through wars, through political upheavals, through the rise and fall of empires, the Quran remained untouched. The powerful tried to suppress it. Tyrants sought to ban it. Enemies of truth attempted to distort it. Yet every attempt failed, for this was not an ordinary book. It was not the work of a man, nor the philosophy of scholars, nor the poetry of the gifted. It was and remains the word of the Almighty, unbreakable, unchangeable, and immune to the forces of time. Compare this with every other religious or historical text in existence. The scriptures of old have undergone countless revisions, translations, and interpretations, often changing so drastically that their original meanings are lost. Human hands have altered, added, and omitted. Even today, religious scholars of other traditions debate which version of their sacred text is the most authentic, the most accurate, the most representative of the original. But there is no such debate with the Quran. The Quran read in the deserts of Africa is the same Quran read in the mosques of Europe. The Quran recited in the mountains of Asia is the same Quran memorized in the cities of the West. A child in a remote village and a scholar in the greatest institutions of learning recite the exact same words, without discrepancy, without variation, without doubt. This preservation was not by chance, nor was it through mere human effort. It was promised by the very words of the Quran itself. Indeed, we have sent down the reminder, and indeed, we will be its guardian. This is not just a claim. It is a reality that has unfolded before the eyes of history. When enemies of Islam sought to destroy its message, they found themselves helpless against the millions who carried its words in their hearts. When oppressors burned copies of the Quran, they soon realized that it was not mere ink on paper that preserved its message, but the voices of those who had memorized it, reciting it back to life with flawless accuracy. Even in the digital age, where misinformation spreads like wildfire, where ideologies are shaped and reshaped by those in power, the Quran remains immune to distortion. It is the only book that is not dependent on any printing press, not limited by any language barrier, not bound by any single medium. It is written, yes. It is recited, yes. But above all, it is memorized. It lives within the hearts of people across all generations, across all cultures, across all borders. It cannot be erased. It cannot be rewritten. It cannot be lost. The challenge has always been there. The challenge remains. If this book were written by man, then let the world bring forth another like it. Let them produce a verse, a chapter, anything that can match its eloquence, its wisdom, its unparalleled depth. But no one has ever succeeded. No poet, no philosopher, no historian, no theologian has been able to replicate even the shortest chapter of the Quran. And so they fear it. They fear its power. They fear its truth. They fear that no matter how much they try to suppress it, distort it, or attack it, it will always stand unshaken, unwavering, untouched. This is why the Quran is unlike any other book. This is why, after 1400 years, it remains as it was when it was first revealed. This is why, no matter how many rise against it, no matter how many try to destroy it, no matter how many seek to replace it, it will remain. Because the promise of its preservation was not made by men, but by the one who revealed it. And when the Almighty makes a promise, nothing in this world can break it. There is something remarkable about the Quran, something that sets it apart from every other book in existence. It is not bound by time, nor is it limited to a specific people, culture, or place. It is a message that transcends generations, speaking to the heart of every human being, regardless of their background, language, or status. Its words are as relevant today as they were over 1400 years ago when they were first revealed. It speaks to the human soul in a way no other text ever has, addressing the deepest questions of existence, the struggles of the heart, the nature of truth, and the purpose of life itself. Throughout history, civilizations have risen and fallen, ideologies have shifted, and human philosophies have evolved. What was once accepted as absolute truth in one era is often dismissed in the next. Laws change, values are redefined, and moral compasses shift with time. Yet amidst all of this, the Quran remains unchanged in its principles, unwavering in its message. It provides guidance for every era, every culture, and every individual, regardless of their circumstances. It is not a book that belongs to one nation or one group of people. It belongs to all of humanity. Unlike human philosophies that come and go, the Quran speaks with an authority that does not waver. It does not cater to the changing desires of society, nor does it conform to the whims of those in power. It upholds justice, truth, and righteousness without compromise. It addresses the rulers and the ruled, the rich and the poor, the learned and the unlettered, giving each of them the same message without distortion or favoritism. It does not change with the trends of the world, yet it remains relevant in every age because it addresses the fundamental truths of human nature. The Quran speaks to the heart. It does not simply provide laws or commandments. It reaches into the depths of the human soul, awakening something within that no other book can. It speaks to those who feel lost, giving them direction. It speaks to those who feel broken, offering them healing, healing. It speaks to those who seek the truth, guiding them toward clarity. It does not demand blind faith, but calls upon people to reflect, to think, and to seek knowledge. It presents signs in the universe, in history, and within the self, urging humanity to recognize the truth through reason and contemplation. Unlike man-made ideologies, which often leave people feeling empty and dissatisfied, the Quran fills the void in the human heart. It speaks to those who have everything yet feel like they have nothing. It speaks to those who have lost everything yet still find hope within its words. It answers the questions that no philosophy or science can fully answer. Why are we here? What is our purpose? What happens after we leave this world? It provides not just intellectual answers, but also emotional and spiritual fulfillment, giving meaning to a life that often feels uncertain and transient. It is a book that comforts in times of despair. When a person feels alone, when the world turns against them, when all hope seems lost, the Quran speaks directly to them. It reminds them that they are never truly alone, that their struggles are seen, that their prayers are heard. It provides reassurance that even in the darkest moments there is light, that even in the hardest trials there is wisdom. It teaches patience in adversity, gratitude and blessings, and reliance on something greater than oneself. The Quran does not only address individuals, but also societies. It lays down principles of justice, ethics, and governance that remain unmatched in their wisdom and practicality. It speaks against oppression, against corruption, against the exploitation of the weak. It upholds the rights of the orphan, the poor, the stranger, and the oppressed. It teaches that true power is not in wealth or status, but in righteousness and good character. It warns those who misuse their authority, reminding them that justice will prevail, if not in this life, then in the next. Despite being revealed in a time and place where tribalism and ignorance were widespread, the Quran's message broke these barriers. It called for unity among people, for equality among races, for justice regardless of status. It uplifted women at a time when they were buried alive as newborns. It honored the weak at a time when strength was the only measure of worth. It commanded fairness in trade, kindness in speech, and integrity in dealings, shaping societies in a way no human philosophy ever could. The Quran provides answers that modern ideologies still struggle to find. In a world where people search for meaning in materialism, in fleeting pleasures, and temporary successes, the Quran shifts the focus to something eternal. It reminds humanity that true success is not in wealth or status, but in contentment, in righteousness, in the fulfillment of the soul. It gives a perspective that goes beyond this life, reminding people that their existence is not meaningless, that every action has a consequence, that every moment is part of a greater journey. It speaks to the intellect and the heart simultaneously. It presents knowledge of the universe, of history, of the self. Yet it also moves the emotions, bringing tears to the eyes of those who truly understand its words. It challenges the mind while soothing the heart. It calls for both faith and reason, proving that the two are not separate but intertwined. It is not a book of myths or blind beliefs, but a book that demands reflection, understanding, and wisdom. And this is why they fear it. They fear a book that gives people power, not the power of wealth or weapons, but the power of truth. They fear a book that cannot be controlled, that cannot be rewritten, that cannot be shaped to serve the interests of the elite. They fear a book that speaks directly to the soul, bypassing the distractions of the world, cutting through deception, awakening hearts. Awakening heart. It is the only book that, when recited, has the power to bring peace to a restless heart, to calm a troubled mind, to soften even the hardest of souls. It is the only book that, even when heard without understanding its language, moves people to tears. It carries a weight, a depth, a truth that cannot be imitated. No other book has been memorized by millions word for word. No other book has remained unchanged despite centuries of attempts to distort it. No other book has unified people across continents, languages, and cultures with the same message, the same words, the same truth. No other book continues to challenge the world, generation after generation, proving its authenticity, proving its power, proving its divine origin. It is not a book of the past. It is not a book limited to one people. It is a book that belongs to every human being who seeks truth. It is a book that is alive, that speaks, that calls, that transforms. It is a book that has changed the course of history and continues to change the lives of those who open their hearts to it. This is why the Quran stands apart. This is why it remains relevant. This is why, after 1,400 years, its message is still as powerful, as urgent, and as necessary as ever. Because it is not a book of men, it is a book of truth, and truth does not fade with time. Truth does not bend to human desires. Truth does not change. Truth remains. There is something extraordinary about the Quran that no other book in human history can claim. It does not merely provide knowledge. It transforms lives in a way that defies logic and explanation. It reaches into the depths of a person's soul and pulls them toward a light they never knew existed. It has taken the most broken of individuals, those lost in darkness, those drowning in despair, those who have given up all hope, and lifted them to a place of peace, clarity, and unshakable faith. It has transformed the hardest of hearts, the most rebellious of spirits, and the most arrogant of minds, bringing them to their knees in awe of its truth. There have been people who spent their entire lives running from faith, denying the existence of a creator, indulging in every pleasure the world has to offer, only to find themselves empty, restless, and longing for something greater. And then they heard the Quran. Not as a book of rules, not as a set of historical events, but as a voice that spoke directly to their soul, answering the questions they had buried deep within. Who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose? What happens after this life? They read its words, and it was as if the veil had been lifted, as if the chains that had bound their hearts for so long had suddenly been broken. Throughout history, the Quran has transformed people in ways that defy explanation. There were once leaders who persecuted those who believed in it, who sought to destroy its message, who waged war against its followers. And yet, by the will of God, they themselves became the very people who carried its banner. They went from being its greatest enemies to being its strongest defenders. What could possibly cause such a transformation? What power does this book hold that it could turn hatred into love, rebellion into submission, arrogance into humility? It has taken criminals, men and women, who once lived lives of corruption, violence, and deceit, and purified their hearts, making them people of honor, integrity, and righteousness. It has taken those consumed by materialism, chasing wealth and status, and reminded them of a higher purpose, showing them that true success is not in the riches of this world, but in the peace of the soul. It has taken those who suffered, those who felt abandoned, those who had lost everything, and given them hope, strength, and a reason to keep going. This is not just a claim. It is a reality witnessed across every continent, in every century, among every people. A book that was revealed in a desert over 1,400 years ago continues to reach the hearts of people in every corner of the world, regardless of their culture, background, or language. It does not matter if they are scholars or those with no formal education, whether they are the richest of the rich or the poorest of the poor. The Quran speaks to all, and it changes those who allow its words to enter their hearts. It is not just an intellectual book. It is a book that moves the emotions in a way that cannot be explained. People who never believed in anything, who lived their lives without any connection to faith, have found themselves overwhelmed with tears upon hearing its words. Those who never understood why they felt empty, why they felt lost, why nothing in this world ever truly satisfied them, suddenly found in the Quran the answers they had been seeking all along. It is not simply a book to be read. It is a book to be felt. It is a book that touches something deep within, something that no other book has ever been able to reach. There are countless stories of those who lived lives far from faith, who had no interest in religion, who were even hostile toward it, yet when they heard the Quran, something changed. They found themselves unable to deny the power of its words. A book they once rejected now became their source of guidance. A book they once ignored now became the very thing they could not live without. They left behind their old ways, not out of fear, not out of pressure, but because the Quran had given them something they had never found anywhere else: peace. It is not a peace that comes from ignorance or blind faith. It is a peace that comes from certainty, from clarity, from knowing with absolute conviction that the words they are reading are not from man, but from the one who created them. The Quran does not just provide comfort. It provides undeniable proof of the truth. It speaks with such authority, such power, such perfection, that even those who doubted it in the beginning find themselves unable to resist its pull. This is why, to this day, millions upon millions of people across the world memorize it word for word, not out of obligation, but out of love. No other book in history has been memorized by so many, across so many languages and cultures. Children as young as 5, men and women who have never even met each other, who come from different corners of the world, recite it exactly the same, without variation, without error. What other book has this level of devotion? What other book has this level of impact? The Quran does not just guide individuals. It shapes entire societies. Wherever it is truly followed, it transforms communities into places of justice, mercy, and righteousness. It establishes a system of morality that is unmatched, a balance between law and compassion, discipline and mercy, duty and devotion. It removes oppression, fights against corruption, and elevates the weak. It takes a people from ignorance to knowledge, from division to unity, from chaos to harmony. This transformation is not limited to history. It is happening right now. Every single day, people across the world are leaving behind their old ways, their doubts, their fears, and embracing the truth of the Quran. It is happening in the depths of prisons, where those who once lived lives of crime find redemption in its words. It is happening in universities, where those who sought knowledge in every philosophy, every ideology, every scientific theory finally find the answers they were searching for in its verses. It is happening in the homes of ordinary people, who in the quiet of their rooms open the Quran and find in it the voice of their Creator speaking directly to them. And this is why they fear it. They fear a book that has the power to change people in a way nothing else can. They fear a book that liberates minds, that breaks the chains of falsehood, that gives people a truth so undeniable that it cannot be manipulated or controlled. They fear a book that does not just inspire belief, but demands action, that does not just comfort the soul, but ignites a fire in the heart. In the heart. The Quran does not ask for blind faith. It calls people to reflect, to question, to seek understanding. It does not impose itself upon the unwilling. Yet those who truly open their hearts to it find themselves unable to resist its truth, ached to mouth. It does not force submission. Yet those who hear its words with sincerity find themselves drawn to it in a way they cannot explain. This is why no matter how much they try to suppress it, no matter how much they attempt to distort it, no matter how much they attack it, the Quran continues to change lives. It continues to spread, to reach hearts, to transform souls, because it is not just a book. It is the word of the Almighty, a light that cannot be extinguished, a truth that cannot be denied. For those who seek it with sincerity, it is an open door, a path to clarity, a road to eternal peace. For those who reject it, it remains a challenge, a reminder, an undeniable proof of the power it holds. It is not an ordinary book. It never was, and it never will be. It is the book that has transformed millions and will continue to transform millions more until the end of time. The Quran is not just a book of history, nor is it merely a book of laws. It is a book of power. It is a book that shakes the very foundations of falsehood, that dismantles the illusions that blind humanity, that exposes the lies that have been carefully crafted to keep people in darkness. It does not just inform, it liberates. It does not just guide, it revolutionizes. It has the power to awaken hearts, to open eyes, to break the chains of ignorance, and to bring people into the light of truth in a way that no other book has ever done. This is why it has always been feared by those in power. It is not a book that can be controlled. It is not a book that can be rewritten, manipulated, or distorted to serve the agendas of kings, rulers, and tyrants. It speaks the truth, regardless of who stands in its way. It calls out oppression, it exposes corruption, and it demands justice with a voice so clear, so powerful, so unshakable, that it has been viewed as a threat by every oppressive system in history. From the moment it was revealed, it was opposed not because it was weak, not because it lacked clarity, but because it was strong. It was fearless. It challenged the status quo. It told those in power that their wealth, their armies, their influence meant nothing in the sight of the Almighty. It reminded them that they were not above justice, that they would one day stand before the one who sees all, who knows all, who judges with absolute fairness. It stripped them of the illusion of control, and that terrified them. Throughout history, the powerful have sought to silence the Quran. It's the Quran. They have banned it, burned it, outlawed its teachings, and persecuted those who carried its message. Yet, despite all of this, they have never been able to erase it. No empire, no dictator, no enemy of truth has ever succeeded in stopping its spread. The more they try to suppress it, the stronger it becomes. The more they attempt to distort its message, the clearer it shines. The more they fight against it, the more people are drawn to it. This is the nature of truth. It does not need force to survive. It does not need manipulation to gain followers. It stands on its own, undeniable, unbreakable, unstoppable. The Quran does not beg for acceptance. It demands recognition. It does not need human validation. It is self-evident in its wisdom, its clarity, its perfection. Those who approach it with sincerity find themselves unable to refute it, while those who fight against it find themselves defeated, not by swords or armies, but by the sheer power of its words. It has been the driving force behind some of the greatest revolutions in history. It has inspired individuals to stand against the most powerful oppressors, to speak truth in the face of tyranny, to sacrifice everything for the sake of justice. It has turned the weak into leaders, the oppressed into liberators, the silent into voices that echo through generations. It has never belonged to the elite, nor has it ever been the tool of the privileged. It has always been the refuge of the seeker, the hope of the broken, the strength of the believer. The Quran does not allow falsehood to stand unchallenged. It does not accept compromise when it comes to truth. It does not cater to those who wish to dilute its message for the sake of convenience or worldly gain. It speaks with absolute authority, making it clear that there is no room for half-truths, for distortions, for playing both sides. This is why it is feared. This is why it is resisted. Because it does not bow to power. It demands that power bows to the truth. For those who seek control over others, the Quran is dangerous. It gives people something more powerful than fear. It gives them faith. It gives them the courage to stand against injustice, to reject falsehood, to see beyond the illusions of this world. It reminds them that their worth is not determined by their wealth, their status, or their affiliations, but by their righteousness, their sincerity, their devotion to the truth. Devotion to the truth. It teaches them that no man, no system, no force on earth has power over them except by the will of the Almighty. The Quran does not just call for belief. It calls for action. It commands people to enjoin what is right and forbid what is wrong. It tells them to establish justice, to fight against oppression, to defend the weak, to speak the truth even when it is difficult, even when it is dangerous, even when the entire world stands against them. It does not teach submission to tyrants. It teaches submission to the Creator alone. It does not teach silence in the face of corruption. It teaches resistance against all forms of injustice. This is why those in power have always tried to control religion, to distort faith, to turn it into something passive, something harmless, something that can exist without challenging their authority. But the Quran does not allow itself to be twisted into a tool of oppression. No. It breaks the chains that rulers try to place upon it. It exposes the hypocrisy of those who claim to act in the name of faith while committing acts of injustice. It reminds the world that true faith is not in empty rituals or meaningless words, but in standing firm upon the truth, regardless of the consequences. Even today, the Quran remains the most feared book by those who seek to control the minds and hearts of people. In a world where deception is widespread, where falsehood is presented as truth and truth is labeled as dangerous, the Quran stands as an unshakable pillar of clarity. It reveals the reality of this world, stripping away the illusions that have been carefully constructed to keep people distracted, divided, and dependent on those in power. It speaks against those who hoard wealth while the poor suffer. It condemns those who manipulate justice for their own gain. It warns against those who spread corruption while pretending to bring peace. It calls upon people to think, to question, to seek the truth with open hearts and minds. And that is something that terrifies those who wish to keep humanity in ignorance. The Quran does not simply tell people what to believe. It provides undeniable proof. It challenges the reader to reflect, to analyze, to seek out the signs in the universe and history in their own existence. It does not demand blind obedience. It invites understanding. It does not impose itself through force. It wins hearts through its truth. It wins hearts through its truth. This is why, no matter how much they try to suppress it, no matter how many times they ban it, burn it, or distort its message, the Quran continues to spread. It continues to change lives. It continues to be memorized, recited, and followed by millions. It cannot be erased. It cannot be erased. It cannot be silenced. It cannot be stopped. Because it is not a book of men. It is not the work of scholars, philosophers, or poets. It is the word of the Almighty, the voice of absolute truth, the guide that has led humanity from darkness to light for over 14 centuries. And it will continue to do so no matter how much they fear it. The Quran is not just a book of the past, nor is it merely a religious text for one group of people. It is a living miracle, a book that transcends time, culture, and geography. It is not bound by the era in which it was revealed, nor is it confined to the people to whom it was first delivered. It continues to impact lives in ways that defy logic, and its relevance has never faded. Unlike any other book in history, it speaks directly to the human soul, addressing the questions and concerns that have troubled humanity from the beginning of time. It provides guidance that is as applicable today as it was over 14 centuries ago. And its influence continues to grow with every passing day. There are books that shape civilizations, books that inspire movements, books that spark revolutions, but no book has done all of this and more on a global scale for as long as the Quran has. It is not just a source of knowledge. It is a force that changes, lives. It does not simply inform, it transforms. It does not just inspire, it commands action. Those who read it with an open heart find that it speaks to them in ways no other text can. It answers the deepest of human questions, providing clarity where there was once confusion, certainty where there was once doubt, and peace where there was once turmoil. Even today, in an era where technology dominates every aspect of life, where scientific advancements have reached unprecedented heights, where people have access to more information than ever before, the Quran continues to be the ultimate source of truth. It is not outdated, nor is it in conflict with modern knowledge. On the contrary, it presents wisdom that aligns with scientific discoveries, ethical principles that remain unmatched, and guidance that proves itself to be as relevant today as it was when it was first revealed. It is a book that anticipated the questions of every generation, providing answers long before humanity even knew what to ask. It does not contradict reason. It invites reflection. It does not demand blind obedience. It calls for understanding. It does not suppress curiosity. It encourages exploration. The Quran does not present itself as merely a book of faith. It is a book of knowledge, a book of wisdom, a book that invites humanity to look at the world around them, to ponder the signs of creation, to seek truth through both faith and intellect. It challenges the reader to think critically, to question assumptions, to search for meaning beyond the material world. Throughout history, countless individuals have attempted to discredit it, to find fault in its words, to prove it wrong. And yet, every single attempt has failed. Scholars, skeptics, philosophers, and critics have analyzed its verses, seeking contradictions, inconsistencies, or errors, but they have found none. Instead, many of them have found themselves in awe of its perfection. They came as challengers and left as believers. They approached it with the intention of disproving it and walked away with a faith they never expected to find. This is the power of the Quran. It is not a book that simply tells people what to believe. It presents undeniable proof. It provides signs that resonate with the human heart, logic that satisfies the human mind, and beauty that moves the human soul. It is the only book that has been memorized in its entirety by millions across the world, word for word, letter for letter, without change or alteration. It is a book that remains preserved exactly as it was revealed, without any additions, subtractions, or modifications. No other book in history has been protected in such a way, and no other book has had its words recited daily by so many people, across so many lands, in perfect harmony. Despite all attempts to suppress its message, to distort its message, to distort its meaning, to keep people away from it, the Quran continues to spread. It reaches places where its recitation was once forbidden. It enters the hearts of those who were once its strongest opponents. It finds its way to those who never expected to embrace it. And when they do, they realize that this book was what they had been searching for all along. It is not just a religious scripture. It is the voice of the Creator calling out to His creation. It does not impose itself on anyone, yet those who hear its words with sincerity find themselves unable to turn away. It does not force belief, yet those who seek the truth cannot deny its message. It does not need human defense, for its words are their own proof. It stands on its own without needing validation from anyone. In every generation, there have been those who claimed that the Quran would become irrelevant, that faith in it would fade, that modernity would render it obsolete. Yet, with each passing age, it only grows stronger. It continues to provide solutions to the challenges of every era, guiding humanity toward justice, morality, and true fulfillment. It remains the book that brings clarity to those lost in confusion, hope to those drowning in despair, and purpose to those wandering without direction. It is the book that has lifted entire civilizations, that has shaped the hearts of the greatest minds in history, that has guided the footsteps of leaders, scholars, and visionaries. It is a book that has survived the tests of time, the attacks of its enemies, and the doubts of skeptics. It is a book that does not simply exist. It thrives. It continues to call out to humanity, inviting them to truth, to purpose, to peace. Those who try to silence it only make it louder. Those who try to destroy it only spread it further. Those who try to distort its meaning only reveal its clarity. No matter how much they fight against it, the Quran remains standing, unshaken, undefeated, untouched. It is not a book that fades into history. It is a book that shapes the future. It is not a book confined to one people, one land, or one era. It is a book for all of humanity, for all of time. It does not belong to the past. It belongs to the present and the future. It is the book that continues to change the world one heart at a time. The Quran is not just a book. It is a force that transforms lives, challenges falsehood, and provides guidance that remains timeless. Despite every attempt to silence, distort, or suppress it, it continues to illuminate hearts and shape the destiny of individuals and nations. It is a book that speaks to the soul, provides undeniable proof, and offers answers to humanity's deepest questions. No power on earth has ever been able to erase it, and no force will ever stop its truth from spreading. It is and will always be the book that changes the world.